We are jumping right at it, taking off from Luleå at high speed and then levitating above the Bothnian Bay, or Bay of Bothnia, which is the northern part of the Baltic Sea between Sweden and Finland. With today's technology, which is not as advanced as the human eye, and given the particular circumstances of the filmmaker, that is me, in a slightly challenging position, sitting in this aircraft chair, unfortunately rain on the aircraft windows makes the rain droplets in focus and the view out of focus. But still, you can see us levitating, and soon we will be flying away from the rain, and at a certain point there will be ice crystal formations on the window instead. In one of the recent Peptalk series, we spoke about helicopters. Efficient flying time is 20 minutes out of the expected, booked, half hour. We paid 3,500 Swedish crowns for the tour, so they did not count how many we were, but some companies want you to pay per person, and yet not all pilots can have this job all year round. During the low season, in winter, our female helicopter pilot was a bus driver. The male pilot who was guiding us at the hangar, which I visited in Porjus, was also a mechanic. And another pilot I met works as a firefighter half the time. And it does not cost that amount of money anymore. Now they charge much more, and they have scenic tours made into a business. In another pep talk, I was sitting next to a crew member who was not on duty and was very proud of his job. He clocked the journey with his beautiful watch because he loved the exactness of the trip. He works with charter travels at a company with 11 aircrafts, and he made big efforts to not reveal the company name. He did not know he was talking to an expert. I, of course, figured out which company it was. For charter travels, he explained, it is about creating vacation mode for the customer from the moment they step on the plane, and also even on the flight home, the last minutes before the vacation ends. He also explained a common misconception about what an all-inclusive trip means. It does not mean that everything is included in the cost of the trip, and even the star rating of the hotel does not tell you how fresh or newly renovated the hotel is. What the star rating means is what services are available. If your hotel has 4 stars, it usually means there is a gym somewhere. If there are meals available throughout the whole day, so you order breakfast, lunch and dinner, if you do that you can have it. That also adds to the star rating. It says nothing about the cost, that you have to pay for each meal separately, just the possibility to have them. Certain hotels in, for example, Mexico, even charge you for using the Wi-Fi with about $20 per day. It is 2024, and I, of course, have to mention that the Swedish astronaut Marcus Wandt returned from space in February. And Sweden, of course, is super excited. Anna Ratzman, the CEO of Swedish National Space Agency, Rymdstyrelsen, says the 400 million Swedish crowns, nearly 35 million euros, were worth it. And it was a last-minute ticket. He got on board. Well, figuratively speaking, we're still talking about the selection process. Then he got selected in November 2022, got to go in 2024, and in space bureaucracy, I love that phrase, and preparation timeframes, that is super fast. For comparison, one of the previous Swedish astronauts, Christer Fuglesang, I actually met him a few months ago during a space conference at the Swedish Royal School of Technology. He had to wait for 14 years before it was time for him to go up to space. Is this the perfect timing for an appropriate joke about astronomical speed here? Anyhow, that wait requires some patience. And to be clear, meeting this astronaut is not on the level that he would remember me and know my name, but he did answer some of my questions about 2 decades ago when he just landed after his space mission and my school arranged for a meeting. All students, and there were many of us, were allowed to ask 1 question each. I had 3 questions, so I teamed up with my neighbors and they asked my 2 other questions for me. That was very kind of them. And a teacher thought I should have asked a question about Christer Fuglesang's training center outside of Moscow, Звездный городок, which is translated into Star City, and the teacher thought I should have done so in Russian. Here are the crystal formations I mentioned before. Apparently, just like the rain droplets, they also affect the focus of my camera. But there are scenic solutions. Watch me zoom out. Here, may I present, my shaking camera also represents real turbulence. Very systematic this time, would I say? I would compare the experience to driving on a bumpy road where the bumps are very even, so while noticeable, they are very predictable in a way, which my camera does not show that well in the beginning, but you see my accurate description better here, with the small shaking more visible when looking at the chair in front of me. I learned recently that there are doctors specialized in space health, and a Swedish doctor with such a specialization explained in the news that before going up to the International Space Station, which space missions often are about, the astronauts get to leave 1 liter of their blood on Earth. This is because astronauts get very dehydrated in space, and the blood becomes thicker, which in turn affects your fitness. There are many interesting things to say about the bodily changes in the space. So while adapting to all that, the International Space Station, ISS, is orbiting around the Earth 16 times per day. So the crew gets to see sunset and sunrise 16 times in 24 hours. My own personal best, I believe, is seeing 24 satellites in 1 evening. You can see them without using binoculars. A very romantic thing to do if you go on a date. And that raises the question, how many satellites are there orbiting us right now? I looked at the space environment statistics available at ESA, the European Space Agency. And when they updated their website last time, the 20th September in 2024, the numbers were that there are about 13,230 satellites still orbiting Earth since the rocket launches that placed them in orbit started. And the starting point in time is the year 1957. Not all satellites are functioning. Of those 13,230 satellites, about 10,200 are still functioning, but it doesn't say how many that actually are in use. The horizon outside our window is about to tilt very much, so we get to see more of the sky. And this doesn't actually feel that much. If you're asleep, this movement would not wake you up normally, but I of course prefer to be awake to see when we enter the clouds from this beautiful angle and to see the cloud formations that I cannot see when standing on the ground. This is better than a video game. And coming back to the space theme, you can be a space designer, of course. According to World Economic Forum and the consultancy firm McKinsey, the global space economy should be reaching 1.8 trillion American dollars by 2035. I had the chance to speak to a Spanish satellite engineer in November. She said, "I will never be out of a job. Countries will always want to have access to satellites." The arguments I've seen are very different. Countries have argued that they need a satellite to have a better overview of their crops. The most general and obvious is that no country wants to fall behind. Interestingly, in the Swedish city of Trollhättan, there are many engineers working in private firms developing satellites and their parts. This has to do with a large concentration of engineers, which remained when the company Saab, which develops and manufactures combat aircrafts, closed down in that town in 2009. Now we are getting even closer to Stockholm. This time I was actually able to capture one of the reasons to why it takes time after we've come to a standstill and are waiting to leave the aircraft. What is happening? That I have on camera. Last time I saw a pilot that really was in a rush, that happens too, we had all already descended and were on ground, and he had gotten a yellow high-vis vest and had stepped down to be underneath the aircraft, accompanied by some other staff, aiming for the door which the luggage comes from, so that he could pick up his luggage right there and not have to wait at the baggage claim inside the airport. I hope it was family and not a work assignment waiting in line, but still a nice perk of the pilot job. Right now, Boeing staff, Boeing the aircraft manufacturer, which is said to be the largest in the world, are still on strike awaiting a raise in salary, which has been reported to not have increased by for many years. The latest bid by the company was to increase the current salaries by 30% for a period of 4 years, and the union said no. In their view, it was too low of a bid. For reference, the CEO of the company, whose name I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, David Calhoun, got a salary of $33 million this year and $22.6 million last year. Meanwhile, the company Scandinavian Airlines, SAS, will be starting 15 new flight lines from Kastrup Airport in Copenhagen next summer. The idea is to make the place a global center for flights. The new lines will be leading to Seattle, Madrid, Milan, and Budapest. We have slightly shaking footage again. Winds near the ground can be very different depending on city. When landing in Hamburg, we were shaking, and I really say shaking, I mean the aircraft of course, because it did not feel like real turbulence. So I asked the staff after landing if it is a common thing to shake this much. My assumptions were that we were too light and the winds too strong. I was surprised to hear the answer. We were not too light, we were heavy. And Hamburg typically has these winds which you feel when landing. Overall, as a rather frequent visitor of Hamburg, the climate keeps making me surprised. During last year's Christmas market, there was so much fog which came literally from nowhere, surrounded me and my company. First I thought maybe something is on fire, but I couldn't feel any smoke. Odor. No, they explained, this is the Hamburg climate. And then the feeling grew into as if we were on a theater stage, and there were special smoke effects to hide us, to make a dramatic entrance possible. So that is the fog of Hamburg. Have you thought of owning an airport? Or even an airbase? Right now, there is an airbase, which is basically one runway and a lot of land, for sale in Åmsele, rather high up in the north of Sweden. It used to be a military base till 2005. The runway is 2,100 meters, and there is a lot of woodland, which the real estate agent, when I read the ad, is making very clear can be used for forestry. The real estate firm also proposes that this place can be used to create a solar cell park or a facility to test cars, possibly motor racing, or be of use to entrepreneurs in need of large spaces. No price tag is available. you find out the price by request. During one of my flights to Stockholm before, I met a 5-year-old girl who was smart, curious, and complimented the airplane. "Did the airplane fly all the way to Stockholm? Has it been working all day? Good airplane! What a great job it did!" And here we are, seeing the great job, just about to touch ground in a couple of seconds. And there we are, on Stockholm land. That 5-year-old also ordered a snack to eat on the airplane. The crew member handed the snack over, smiling. "How do you wish to pay?" The girl shrugged. "I'm just a child. Mom?" This winter, I hope to see a concert in Valencia. I was recommended the concert hall in Valencia in particular by a music critic, which I met at the opera in Stockholm. Before the play that we were about to see, he Googled a lot of tombstones and said, "Look, we're going to hear the music by this person. He resides in Paris at the graveyard there." So it was a very interesting interaction. The biggest challenge will be how to pack for 30 plus degrees when traveling from minus 30 degrees. The challenge to travel light with a rucksack, as I do, is that the shoes are the most difficult part. Proper winter shoes, the real deal, have a distinctly thick sole, and they probably take up the entire rucksack. So yes, I can bring maybe a toothbrush, but that's basically it. I also found a fun version. If you don't really want to have a thick sole, there is a model called Grizzly Heat, with the function that you have batteries that heat up your feet for up to 48 degrees during 5 hours. I really do not want to have shoes that are battery dependent, because how would I charge them if I'm out in the cold all day? But it will be a fun pair to try on. Either way, regarding of the shoe, they will take up a lot of space, and if I find a good solution, I will tell you. It worked rather well last time in Barcelona in December, but then I was traveling from minus 10, not minus 30, and coming to not plus 30, but plus 17. In July 2025, Sweden no longer will have taxes when you buy your flight tickets. This is a big plus for me as a frequent domestic traveler, also for changing when going abroad, but of course, one has to be realistic. There is no guarantee that ticket prices will not rise to compensate for those taxes, because there is now suddenly this excellent void of opportunity to fill. And I'm thinking, as a customer, I have the impression that the sudden change on flight taxes happened almost as soon as the CEO of Ryanair said the company has little reason for developing routes in Sweden. In just an instant now, you will be seeing what I mentioned earlier in the video. What is it that takes time after we've come to a standstill? And that is the part of that someone has to knock on the aircraft door. And how do you knock on an aircraft door? Well, you bring your own staircase, as is the case here. And after the contact has been established, the door has been opened, then you have to create the temporary pathway that will take the passengers to the nearest exit and lead them into the main building where the luggage awaits them. And that takes time. So there is absolutely no reason for stressing at this point. But do take a moment for a strategic glance around you. Sometimes walking out through the back door means that you will save no time and actually walk double or triple the distance. Maybe you don't mind, maybe this will save you time. And we're soon about to get our thumbs up.